And that's where the entire Bible is essentially the journey of the spiritual man, spiritual woman, coming into the knowledge while in the flesh. And that's why they call their Jesus not the Son of God, but the Son of Man, which means it is man that is the Christ, man that is the Jesus, man that is the Savior of himself. There's nothing coming down from heaven to save you. And if there is, it's because that's Project Bluebeam playing with y'all.
Boom. Let me take a sip of this tea.
Yeah.
So there's a growing interest in the idea about metaphysical practices might be able to activate dormant DNA. Have you heard anything or researched anything about the dormant DNA, what they're calling junk DNA, which I don't believe is really junk, but that understanding spirituality or metaphysics can help to activate that?
Yeah, this is all old news. If you go back in, I have something called the Metaphysics of DNA that's on the YouTube somewhere floating around. I did about 10, 15 years ago. The junk DNA is not, that was the DNA, quote unquote, that was essentially the redeemer. That's your redemption at that point. You have to understand what happens now in the so-called junk. The junk was not something that was actually pre-planned. That took place during what we call the fall of man. The fall of man was that in order for us to occupy this realm, we had to eject or at least put into stasis a certain amount of the 22 strands. Now they tell you we have only 6 strands, 9 strands, and 12 strands. Lies. We have 22 strands. And those 22 strands can be knitted together to show you the gematria, or what we call the Hebrew language. All 22 letters put together, strung, essentially is what your DNA was supposed to look like when you weren't a bisexual creature. You were one in a spiritual realm. You existed in a whole other dimension. And what you are right now is beaming in the spark that's in your soul. You are beaming in from a whole other dimension and participating in this realm, in this depth. That's why they call it third density. You're under about 1,600 pounds of square inch per pressure. And that pressure is what you now have been created to exist in, the way fish and other animals exist in the water under a certain type of pressure. And you would need a certain type of suit to go down into their particular, well, this is your suit. This is where you need, this is the one that you took on. And you had to sacrifice a certain amount of that DNA. Now, what they've been doing, and this is what you have to be very careful of, they've been trying to get you to take that monatomic gold. Well, if your cells do not have the proper calibration of magnesium to that will be part of the cells, then the monatomic gold will then activate that DNA and spark it, give you a momentary rush, but then end up preventing you from braiding that DNA yourself. That DNA is your raw material that spiritually begins to bind as you rise in consciousness. So now they're finding that the European has a 6-strand DNA, but now they found a 9-strand DNA in the brothers and sisters in the Sudan. Now they're going to end up finding that the indigenous peoples that they're digging up here in America have the 12-strand DNA, and they're going to end up finding outside of the Antarctic, they're going to find people that have the 22 strands. So you have to deal with the fact that there are people using our sun right now as a portal to travel in and out through different domes, through different realities, and that's what you're seeing at this particular time. The sun is nothing more than a vibrating orb of plasma, just like the moon is plasma. The moon is not a solid rock with all these things. It's nonsense. All of that, all of the illusions that they're giving us is to stop us from seeing the reality that we really are living in.